some of you haven't. So my name is Nondwe Mpuma, and I am a lecturer at UWC, a host at the Red Wheelbarrow. Um, yeah, and I've published in collections in the country and collections in the States. So I'm going to be reading some of my poetry. So tonight I decided to revisit some of my like older stuff. So some of my older poetry that I sort of put to the side and forgot about. I'm going to read some of that, and I'm going to read some poems that come from Cutting the Carrots the Wrong Way, which was published in 2017 by Uhlanga. I'm going to read some pieces from that. And yeah, so I will start now. Okay, so the first piece I'm going to read is a poem that is called, okay, so I've got my papers all over the place. Um, Give me a second, please. So I'm going to start with things to miss. Things to miss. Your mother's hand on your chest, rubbing menthol. Your breasts stand in the way now. The whiff of your grandfather's Stuyvesant. Umdlavuzana has taken that away too. The next poem that I'm going to read is called Taking Into Account. Taking into account the crooked left toe that crashed against the corner of the coffee table, 357 moles on the parts of her body that she could see, she was going to live a long life. Her breasts gradually wanting to feel the earth. She hasn't even had them fill with milk. The sea scar on her hand. Someday it will be a marker to identify her. Faded lines from above her hips to just above her knees. They mark the fluctuations of fashion. What else could she have left behind? This is a poem that was published by 35 Points. Yeah, this was my first internationally published poem. So this poem is called A Monkey's Wedding. It was rain on a sunny day. The monkeys kissed. There was a rainbow. The banana cake was cut. Mother was overjoyed. It was raining on a sunny day. Mother watched her daughter get laid to rest. All her children bowed their heads in tears. The rain fell on a sunny day. I forgot to congratulate the monkeys. All I could remember was dust to dust, ashes to ashes, and mother wailing over her daughter's tomb. So at one point in my life, I was very interested in playing with the quality of quickness. So quickness. So how you can read quickly, sort of like a rap, but how you then translate that into writing. So I attempted it with like two poems. So this is one of the two poems, and it's called The Fufi Slide. The Fufi Slide. Flying into the river, then plunging into the river, plunging into the flat stomach murky river, slid down the rope from the peak of the oak structure, past the tree, past the last strip of land, and into the river, but I had to hold on, to hang on before I let go. When I did let go, I flew and plunged. A few, I think it was 2019 when William Kentridge had a piece at the Zeitz. And I really liked the music of that piece. So I think for a course, so I did my creative writing masters with Kubus Mulman. So when we were doing that, we went to the Zeitz and we sat through that exhibition, and I wrote this poem after, like I think a few days after I wrote this poem. The Procession. She touched the music again, felt the caution. Basoba nanzindo demnyama. The sound of the funeral procession thumped in her belly. The war on dead eyes stared back. There are those who are like this, those who are carried by laughter, by disease, by sickness, by death. Kukhona banjena, who are whales in the ocean, imbundulu at the witching hour. She heard the music tell her when her twin sister was dunked and pulled out of her grave. There are those who are like her, ready to be shelved into the earth. She saw the music rub her stomach as her body descended into the earth. Kukhona abanjena, who are born, live, and die like art. This is one of the few kind of like love poems, and it's called Come Closer. Come closer. I will not throw myself into you. I will stand here far from your sand and shells. I will sit with you under the fading moon and listen to you rumble. I will not come any closer to your leopard leaps. I will not be your prey. I have been told that in you children drown, adults drown. I wait for morning to pour some of you into the Coke bottle beside me. I wait for the afternoon to sprinkle you around my yard. Wait for the evening to come back to this moment, to listen to you give and give once more. Loads. Nokutulampuku carries the ridicule of having repeated grade 1, grade 2, and 3. Her stutter was never diagnosed as dyslexia. Nokutulampuku carries 2 of her children. She gave birth to one at the age of 17 and the other when she was 19. Both are fathered by the man she was carried to marry in a sack. She was 17 and he was 52. Nokutulampuku carries her mother's house. It was left to crumble after she married. Nokutulampuku carries the men who have passed through her body. This includes her other son who resembles her uncle. His passing is mapped on her belly. Nokutulampuku carries the death of her mother, Nokuzola. Even in drunken bliss, she would have fought rabid dogs for her daughter. Nokutulampuku carries the absence of her father. Perhaps he would have taken care of his nephew grandson. In her husband's mind, that son belongs in the kennel with her saliva drooling dogs. Nokutulampuku carries a sack of clothes. Her husband kicked her out. He said that she could sleep with the pigs. This was after she left home with her children at noon and trekked 12 kilometers to the clinic and back. A home cooked meal had not made it to the table but by 7 o'clock. Nokutulampuku carries the 760 Rand social grant of 2 of her sons. It feeds the family of 10. Nokutulampuku carries a daughter in her belly. One of her 2 sons are fast approaching 18 years old, the age at which she no longer qualifies for the grant. Motherhood is the only job that her husband approves. Nokutulampuku sighs because she's alive. Her arms are still able to carry. As you can see from what I've read thus far, I'm very much a death poet. I love death. So the next poem I'm going to read is Morning is the Time We Count the Dead. First, the ones who come out of the womb silent. Second, the ones who die before the fall of their deciduous teeth. Third, the ones who have fought and lost against old age. Fourth, the ones who mourn the ones dying. Fifth, the ones who live dying. Sixth, the ones devoured by abnormal growths. Seventh, the ones who fly themselves out of windows. 8th, the ones who mourn the ones who should be dead. Finally, the ones who mourn each morning. Okay, so I'm gonna have a little dig through my papers once again, because they are still all over the place. So I attempted writing like a political poem. I suck at those, but I attempted writing one. So my genuine attempt at writing something political. So it's called Places Other Than Home. Poverty is a boy with oversized clothing and long curly hair sitting in the middle of Alexanderplatz Square, an empty Burger King cup and a large cardboard written for weed. The boy's eyes flirt between here and some other place. He is sitting, catching fish on concrete. Sometimes home is foreign, where a cathedral was built on the ruins of a 12th century Romanesque church that once stood there. How did men without cranes carry boulders of rock bigger than what we use to make churches now? History begins closer to Adam and Eve in such places, where our history begins in 1652. Ruins before then lie silenced by the man called history. Sometimes home is foreign, where the smell of sewage embedded in what I imagine to be Durban's humidity sits on my chest. Sometimes home is a country, where a gospel singer once said, "There is no dustbin for a human being." We find them under the bridge, on the pavement in town, in squatters, in some place somewhere, in war. Sometimes home is a country, where poverty maps itself in the land with corrugated iron and thatch roof, and a blind man singing on a train for coin, man on street corners with cardboards naming skills, builder, painter, plumber, man washing windows at robots, a man without a leg sleeping on a train station bench. So many scenes that you hold your purse tighter in public spaces. Sometimes home is a country, with patches of carved stone and many open spaces that make it easier to breathe. Sometimes home is a country where yellow and red repel each other. Okay. Okay, I'm going through a lot of papers, so bear with me, please. Okay, so this poem is untitled. It was untitled from when I wrote it, but it begins. In the other room, the splish splash of dishes being washed sounds, the occasional sound of a passing car, the bedroom door open, vendor flutters through the house. My cold feet tucked beneath a blanket, I lie looking at the lumpy ceiling, yellow white light in my eyes, and I wonder what next. I don't know how many people have a rural background, but here at home, we do a lot of chicken slaughtering. So if you're vegetarian, sorry. So this poem is called The Snap. It was time. The last squawk sounded. The preparation. The water boiled. A knife. A knife on a stone sharpened. A slit. A creak. A crack. A snap. The separation. Body. Head. The fading neck and leg pulse. The automatic feather ruffles. The headless gurgle. The last drops of crimson on enamel. Warm, cool, cold skin. Okay, so this is the last of my early poems. I don't know how am I doing for time. Okay, so this is the last of my earlier poems, and this one is called The Pencil. I can't remember who it follows after, but it follows after a poet who's done a similar thing. Okay, so the pencil. The pencil with a short lead. The red and black pencil. The pencil with a necktie. The pencil that drew flowers. The pencil with peeling paint. The pencil that wrote a D instead of B. The pencil I lost. The pencil whose lead could only be uncovered by a knife. The pencil that lived on the edge. The pencil that wrote multiple tests at once. The pencil that screwed with my mother's portrait. The pencil I threw away. The pencil that drew a scar. The pencil plastered with tape. The pencil that was stolen. The pencil that was stolen back. The pencil with all the smarts. The pencil that failed a maths test. The pencil the length of my pinky. The pencil that always found its way back. Thank you, Kubas. Yes, it's inspired by Raymond Carter. See, it's very nice to have your supervisor in the room. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to my earlier poems. And the first one I'm going to read is called Jews. And I think all women would relate to this one. So, Jews. The bell chose was always meant to be a leaking pipe, red in the body flowing south, drops dripping dizzy. Dizzy tells you, sit down. Dizzy tells you, ride the wave of the first cloth. Dizzy tells you, well done, fertile girl, you are now a woman. Now the old bell chose is a broken furnace, and that time of the month is Umzimvubu plummeting over a cliff and into the boiling pot. The diagnosis. I understand that the belly cracks beneath the weight of the air that the blood pushes to your tailbone, and that your eyes every now and then see dark spots, and you suspect that you have dizzy spells, and you think that sitting feels like you have borrowed your grandmother's 80-year-old body, and kneeling brings no relief other than allowing the air to settle heavily on your tail and ovaries. And I remember from our last meeting that when the headaches come, your head becomes a forgotten boiling egg, and that you think the murmurs in your hands indicate that you have a mild case of vertigo, and that laying down eases the air in your waist, and you get an urge to pick out on junk food, and your mouth is as dry as a burnt piece of steak, and you guzzle down water like an endless river. And if I'm to understand you correctly, all these symptoms occur at that time of the month. Bubblegum at the virginity testing ceremony. An older woman came up on stage. She had no speech written out, but the outer corners of her eyes were slanted by an abundance of wisdom. Her speech began with, Dizoteta ngenyama yezifebe. It will force your legs open and pull a baby out of you. The tension between the upper and lower molars will pull more babies out. Suddenly, you will be a female dog whose mouth has been pinned open for old dogs. Once your teeth clamp on it, you are destroyed for life. For time, I think, okay, I have 5 minutes. Is that right, Melissa? Is it 5 minutes? Yes? No?
Yeah, 5 or more. It's
All
up
right.
to you.
Okay, so I'm going to read the next poem. It's called A Sleepless Night. Arms are wilted spinach. At this time of night, the head is heavy with sleep. Suck the sleep with a syringe. Draw it the way laxatives do a full stomach. Legs are peeled tree stalks. The spine moves the bones to the left, then the right, and finally turns the bones to look up at the shadows on the ceiling. A spider is at home near the light bulb. Night does not flood the room with darkness. In the left corner near the bookshelf, another spider weaves a cocoon around a dead moth. The eyes look because the spine has turned the bones left again. The head will be heavy for another week. List of things that are bad luck. Watching donkeys give birth. There are things that must never be seen lest we lose our sight. Sweeping at night. One can never be too careful with the approach of the witching hour, and no woman readily volunteers to be a spinster. Eating with the left hand, doing anything left handed. There is something disturbing about having similarities with monkeys and not being right. Being behind someone, giving something to someone behind their back or behind someone else's back. Backs carry many burdens, and most frightening, the burden of bad luck. Closing all the doors and windows during a storm. Lightning requires an entrance and an exit. Refusing ceremonial meat. The ancestors hold generational grudges. Mumbling about a parent. They are closer to where feet turn and toes point to the sky, and once at this place, they become those who hold generational grudges. And I think my final poem, yeah, I guess. So this poem is called Three Ceremonies. 1. The happy couple walk down the aisle with God's blessing, comforted by their dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over the cattle and over all the earth, comforted by the capacity of her womb to hold, and not by the years that she will remain barren and all the years that he will sow his seed in other pastures over the earth. In her champagne white gown and him in his charcoal tuxedo, the happy couple walk down the aisle in a church as one flesh, blessed by the Trinity. 2. She is dressed by her mother and sister in an indigo three cats dress that complements her husband's shirt. She sits on a mat, her head lowered, counting ants. Before they throw blankets over her, and her new family puts her in thick off-white cotton gown with black trimming on the skirt and shawl. The old woman in the middle of the tent next to her new granddaughter-in-law holds a full jug of brew. She pours 3 drops on the ground while calling out 3 of the nearest clan names and tells them that they must open. In quick succession, the young woman is changed and blankets are thrown over her, and he sits and marvels over what a blushing bride she is. She who will brew beer, brew children, brew a home, all for him. 3. He enters her father's kraal with the gift that will make mouths move, and a bottle of Klipdrift export under his armpit. He gifts her father with a cow and takes his leave. There is no special dress for the day. She is in everyday clothes in the home that she will leave for her own. Her family throws more blankets over her that will keep her warm when he leaves. And yeah, thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to.
Thank you so much, Nondwe. Your voice is very soothing. I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but I feel like it was a beautiful reading. It was really good to hear you sharing. Thank you. Anyone who has any questions for Nondwe, you're welcome to either raise your hand, which is under the reactions, or unmute yourself and pop on. Yeah, I think my question would be is, Do you feel like you have any specific themes you write on? I noticed a few sort of speaking about womanhood, specifically maybe in rural context as well, and I thought that was really interesting and necessary to kind of give those stories a voice in this poetry sort of world. Do you want to speak on that at all?
Yeah, I don't think I stick to any particular theme at like at one point in time, I guess, but I am curious. I mean, I did grow up in a rural area, and whenever you read books, whether it's novels or poetry, there's very few books that you can reference, like that you can relate to as somebody who is from a rural area. So I do have, I guess, compassion and empathy for the rural landscape and people in rural areas. So I do tend to waver and write about that. And womanhood, I think, yeah, I do write about that a lot because I feel like I struggle with being a woman. I try to make sense of it. What does it mean? What does it look like? So I do find it fascinating just as much as I find death fascinating. So yeah.
Awesome. Anyone else who'd like to say something? Jacques' hand is up.
Okay. I was hoping somebody else would ask before me, but Nondwe, that was an incredible reading. I was so moved by Nomvula and many of the poems. The one that haunts me is the one about bad luck, because it's a list poem, and I know you love list poems, but you making the list there, it fascinates me because it almost feels as if you're hovering between listing something that is true and criticizing sort of a particularly fearful way of looking at the world. I'm not saying this well, but it absolutely haunts me. Maybe the poem about generational grudges is, I have a similar question about, do you have anything you'd like to say about that? I'm fascinated by where you stand in those poems.
I had to just quickly go back and like look at what it actually says. Um, yeah, so I think as much as I grapple with things like death, I also grapple with things like faith. What does it mean to be Christian? What does it mean to practice African tradition, spirituality, and also just the things that I grew up hearing and the things that people around me believe, like my grandmother. My grandmother, for example, with lightning, she's deathly afraid of lightning. Whenever there's lightning, we have to keep all the doors open. We have to cover all the mirrors. There's all these things that are like tradition around certain things. And so some of them make sense and some of them don't. So I think there is a space to critique the things that don't make sense, at least to me. So when I was writing about the whole generational grudges, when we have a ceremony, there are particular parts of the meat that go to particular people at times. So, for example, when my aunt got married, actually, no, let me make a different example. When my cousins went to the mountain and they came back, there was a piece of the goat that was slaughtered that could only be consumed by my cousins and I, all the girls. We had to eat this like tray full of meat, and there was only like 4 of us, and we just could not handle it. We just kept eating, but we physically could not finish eating that meat. And that story is sort of stuck, and it was like you have to stay there until you finish it because it's for the ancestors, and there's just that sort of pressure to complete this task because of the grudges that could be held against you. So when one dies, then they become the ancestor who will hold not eating meat against you. So I guess I was playing around with those ideas at the time, or I'm still even thinking about those things now. So yeah.
Just to say something very wonderful happens for me because you put the things in the list that make sense, and you put the things in the list that don't make sense until until the reader really starts wondering. And it's a bit like vertigo, but it's wonderful. I love it. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Jacques.
I don't know if you want to answer Ian Bell's question in the chat about when did you start writing? What was your principal provocation?
Oh, so I started writing in high school. I guess I started taking myself seriously in high school. There was some poetry competition that I wrote for in high school. I did not win. I didn't even come up in the top 3. And reading the poem now, it was terrible. It was super bad. And the next poem I wrote after that was the monkey poem. And I sort of kept that. I felt like there was something special in it, and I kept it until I got to varsity. I sort of abandoned writing for a while. And when I got to my 3rd year of English, I took up a creative writing course and I continued writing. So yeah, so it's sort of just been from high school and then on and off throughout. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Are you writing now a lot? I think you said your PhD is more literature focused, so I'm imagining that's less of your own writing and more analyzing that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I'm also working on my first collection, which I've been
Ooh.
procrastinating on heavily. So I am writing. I have some things that I love to hate. So it's just like editing process. So yeah, I'm writing.
Do you have anything to share about when we can look forward to something like that, or is it still very much in the works?
I feel like now it's still very much in the works. I will keep it on talk for now.
Okay, cool. Ruth has a hand up.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Really beautiful reading. I was just wondering if you could remind me of the name of the woman. You have a poem dedicated to a woman who went through a lot, to make a complete understatement. The woman who walked 12 kilometers to the clinic, I think, and she was made pregnant by her uncle, if I remember correctly. What is the name of the woman again?
So the name is Nondwe Mpuma, but that's a name that I gave to the speaker in the poem. And the poem is more of a collage of different people's experiences, more than one person, or like one person who's gone through it. Like I know people who've gone through similar things, and it's sort of like a collation of those things. Not really.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I was also wondering about that, if this was inspired by a real person or, yeah, but really beautiful poem. And I also love the one about the woman, I think, who she was pregnant and she died. Did I understand that correctly? There was one before that about pregnant woman, she crashed, or no, maybe I misunderstood the poem. Okay, but thank you anyway, very beautiful.
Thank you, Ruth. I do see the comments. Thank you, Pin Daga. Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Smango. Thank you. Who am I missing out? Thank you.
We have a hand from Silke again for a question.
Hi there, Nondwe. Thank you so very much for a most compelling reading. The thing that struck me so much about your reading, and before I say that, I need to say where I'm coming from, which is that although I don't come from rural areas really, although I had some life in a rural area, I'm also a woman who has felt the weight of stern and hard traditions imposing themselves upon the life of the individual. And what strikes me about your poems is the point of view of the women who are carrying the weight of the beliefs nurtured by those traditions who will not change. And what struck me, and what I find a challenge in my own work, is you write from the point of the women doing the carrying, suffering the unchangingness of those traditions, the almost rigidity of them. And I wondered what would happen if you wrote, or not you, but if one considered the points of view of the man, you know, that one poem, you know, where she's doing it all for him. What would happen if one tried to get inside that man? It's something I've tried to do in my own thoughts, at least, to try and almost break the separateness in which these traditions keep us imprisoned as women and men. It's not really a question, it's really just asking for comment.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It would be an interesting just exercise in just first trying to imagine, I guess, imagine myself as a man who is doing all of this, like how first I'd have to get into a demented mindset to actually sit down and do that kind of writing, because I'm not a man, and to be oppressive, I don't know how it feels like to be the one who's doing the oppressing. Might have done it, but I don't know. I haven't been conscious of myself doing it. So yeah, it would be an interesting thing to try out. Maybe I'll give it a try. And if I do give it a try, I'll share it. How about that? Give it a try and
Well, yeah, because you know what's often has occurred to me is that oppressor surely does not think of himself as that. He's just thinking, I'm doing what I've got to do, what everybody expects me to do, what the ancestors expect me to do, what tradition expects me to do. He's got no choice. He's just as much a prisoner, surely, it's occurred to me anyway, as the victim. Or no, everyone is a victim when there is such imprisonment in a rigid way. Sure.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you, Silke.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you for that thought, Silke. I see we've got a question from Smego. Not sure if that's your name.
Magona.
There we go, Magona, sorry.
That's okay, that's okay. Good evening, Nondwe. You also got me with that, what's her name? Nokutula poem, my God. Whoa, 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 whoa. I applaud you, Alala Mtombazana. You know, the sensitivity, I mean, you show Uguti, you have an eye and you have a heart. You couldn't write those poems if you didn't feel for the people who go through those things. And from my vantage point, so young, I'm just amazed. Keep it up and carry on. At the point of our fathers, our brothers, our sons, they are who they are because of what's, you know, we are all born innocent of knowledge. It's how society raises its young. And it's a terrible thing, because the person oppressing the woman he supposed and he professes to love often has no idea he's being oppressive. You will hear a man, recently I had, it's numbing. A young man saying he's very much in love with his, he will look after the baby, he will change nappies, unless of course he's done a big job, then it's the wife who must do it. You know what I mean? Thank you, Nondwe. I'm glad I said, I had some problems coming in, but I came in just as you are about to say, okay, I'm starting. I'm technically challenged, so this is a huge thing for me to be here. Not because I didn't want to, I wanted to, but it might as well have happened that I didn't appear. Thank you, darling. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mama. Thank you so much. And Ian, mainly I write in English. I mix some Xhosa occasionally and some Zulu occasionally. I've only written one test poem in Xhosa, like one full test poem in Xhosa, and it was a love poem. And I think it was very successful, but that's like a personal thought. So Xhosa people who read Xhosa haven't heard it. So I don't know how successful it actually is.
I see Ed's hand is also up now.
Hey, Nondwe.
Hello.
That was a fantastic reading. Thank you. I just wanted to chime in a little bit with what Silke said, but I actually found the point of view in those poems not just simple. I found that things were interrogated. I don't think that everything was just accepted. So yeah, I think your gift for details, those details managed to, yeah, say that things are not quite as one expects or accepts. And I was wondering about the thing of writing from the point of view of the other gender, and in a way it seems almost impossible to do that, but people have done it, and I guess one of the ways into that is empathy. Yeah, I loved the list poems. There were a lot of highlights. The three ceremonies, Nokutula. I loved the death poems. So, hey, thanks very much.
Thank you, Ed.
Hey.
I see Jacques' hand is back up. If anyone else has anything, you're welcome to also pop up your hand or unmute yourself at some point. Otherwise, I'll go back to Jacques. Yeah, Jacques, or maybe it's Barbara, I don't know.
Yeah, it's cheeky to ask a second question, and yeah, sorry.
You're allowed to.
Apologize to Nokutula for getting her name wrong. I called her Nomvula instead. But I have a question. Is it easy for you to? Is it a simple choice to write in English rather than Xhosa? Is it something you think about, or is it something that just feels right for now?
I think one, it's because a lot of my Xhosa is self-taught. It's simply being, I think the last time I formally learned Xhosa was like in grade 3, but I have a really good handle on how to write and how to read Xhosa, just because I was very keen on being able to read, write in Xhosa from a very young age. But English is the language where I've been taught to read, write, speak in for all my life. So I think most of the time it depends on the poem that I'm writing. Because even when I do decide to use Xhosa in the English poems, it's usually because I find English inadequate for what I'm saying in Xhosa. And even when I name people and things in my poetry, there is a specific reason why I name them in that particular way. For example, Nokuthula Mpuku, her name, Nokuthula, it's somebody who is, well, it means to be quiet. And Mpuku means mouse, so the quiet mouse. And then, so it's like the quiet mouse, and then it continues. So someone who is bilingual will be able to get those nuances when it comes to the switch between English and Xhosa. But I feel like it's pointless to use Xhosa or Zulu in a way that services English. They must equally be important in that poem. So yeah, I don't know if that answers you, but yeah. And I do see in the chat that there is a lot of conversation around the oppressiveness and the oppressor and the oppressed. And there was very interesting takes on that. I mean, yeah, I do believe that to be oppressive, there is some part of you that needs to know, just to weigh in on that, that there is some part of you that knows that this is wrong. Even though you continue doing it, there is a part of you. So I think that's why I would struggle to write in as an oppressor. I mean, yeah, you could think that what you're doing is normal, but there is a part in you that is like, I'm wrong. I shouldn't be doing this technically, but I am. So just weighing in on that. And I'm gonna mute.
Thank you for that. Glad to see everyone's having such a great, lively debate there in the chat. Anyone else who'd like to ask anything or weigh in or share any thoughts? Please feel free to unmute yourself or wave at me or raise your hand. Not seeing anyone. Anything else you'd like to say, Nondwe? Is there anything you'd like to promote or place to follow you?
Hello, family. I see family in the thing,
Yay.
on the hello, family. Okay, yeah, that's it. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add, but I will read my Xhosa poem for the Xhosa speakers in the room and the Zulu speakers. They might get it and they might like it, so at least I'll know that it's bad or good. So yeah, I'm gonna read this poem. And that will be it for me for the night. Okay, so this was written for a friend of a friend who is getting married. That's why I wrote a love poem, which is very much against me. So I just called it Fompumi. Fompumi. Kukho isiziba sokudibana kwemiphefumlo emibini. Nangoko kukho iintlanzi zentlungu, iintlanzi zovuyo, iintlanzi zoxolo, iindudumo zamazwi aphula intliziyo. Iintsuku zikaxakeka ezenza umzi uthi cwaka. Imiphefumlo ebambene njengemidiliya iyadada nobukhosi phezu kwazo bencwadi phakade. Did that go okay, or did I break up?
You froze. So
I
if
froze?
you want to start again, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's because of my data thing. Okay, cool. I'll reset.
Yeah.
Fumpumi. Kukho iziziba zokudibana kwemiphefumlo emibini, nangoko kukho iintlanzi zentlungu, iintlanzi zovuyo, iintlanzi zoxolo, iindudumo zamazwi aphula intliziyo, iintsuku zikaxakeka ezenza umzi uthi cwaka. Imiphefumlo ebambene njengemidiliya iyadada nobukhosi phezu kwazo zonke izinto zasemhlabeni. Ndithi ke kuni ntliziyo zithungeneyo, babhali beencwadi ezincinci, wena mtyane thunga, wena nenekazi limoyizelayo, nawe nene lizingcayo, ngelam, dadani nidade kude kufike ephakadeni. And yeah, that is it.
Bravo, thank you. Nondwe Mpuma, everyone. Welcome to Unmute and Clap.
Thank you, Nondwe. Thank you. Thank you for being brave.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing the space, virtual space with me. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us. If you don't already follow us, we host poets every week on Thursday evenings at this time. So you're welcome to follow our Facebook page or email us to join our weekly email mailing list with all the info of each week. And then we'll have an open mic. Let's take a 5-minute break to refresh your glasses or do whatever you need to do. Find your pose and then please stay and share. So we'll meet back here at about 33 past 8.